The moment Alex Chen stepped through the wrought iron gates of Westfield Academy, he knew he didn't belong. His worn backpack hung heavy on one shoulder, the small tear in its side carefully mended with duct tape. Around him, students arrived in luxury cars, their designer uniforms crisp and new, while Alex's second-hand blazer was slightly too big in the shoulders. It was his foster mom, Diane, who had found the scholarship opportunity. She'd seen him playing on the old keyboard at the community center, his fingers moving with a grace that seemed impossible for someone who had never taken a lesson. "That's raw talent," she'd told him one evening, sliding the application across their small kitchen table. "And talent deserves a chance." Alex hadn't wanted to apply. What was the point? Places like Westfield weren't built for kids from the foster system, but Diane had insisted, and now here he was, clutching his acceptance letter like a shield as he navigated the sprawling campus. The main building rose before him, all Gothic architecture and ivy-covered walls. Students brushed past without a second glance, their conversations a blur of vacation homes and private tutors. Alex swallowed hard and checked the campus map again. Music department, East Wing, 3rd floor. The hallways of Westfield Academy smelled like lemon polish and old money. Portraits of distinguished alumni lined the walls, their stern faces watching as Alex made his way to the administrative office. A woman with silver-rimmed glasses looked up as he approached her desk. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice clipped. I'm new. Alex Chen. I have a meeting with the music department head." The woman's eyes narrowed slightly as she took in his appearance. "Ah, yes, the scholarship student. Mr. Harrington is expecting you. Down the hall, last door on the right." Alex nodded his thanks and turned away, pretending not to notice how she wiped her hand on a tissue after handing him his schedule. He found the music department easily enough, drawn by the sound of a violin being played with technical perfection. Following the melody, he paused outside a practice room where a girl with copper hair was playing, her eyes closed in concentration. For a moment he stood transfixed until she opened her eyes and caught him watching. "What are you looking at?" she asked, lowering her violin. "Sorry," Alex mumbled. It sounded beautiful. The girl studied him for a moment, taking in his ill-fitting uniform. "You're the charity case, aren't you? The one who got the Mathers scholarship?" Alex felt his face grow hot. "I'm Alex, I'm new." "Olivia Winters," she replied, not extending her hand. "Word of advice? Don't waste Mr. Harrington's time. He can spot a fraud from a mile away." Before Alex could respond, a bell rang, signaling the start of the hour. Olivia packed up her violin with practiced movements and brushed past him without another word. The door to Mr. Harrington's office was heavy oak, the name plaque polished to a shine. Alex knocked twice, his knuckles barely making a sound against the solid wood. "Enter," called a voice from within. Mr. Harrington was a tall man with salt and pepper hair and the posture of someone who had spent decades correcting the form of young musicians. He didn't stand when Alex entered, merely gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Mr. Chen," he said, glancing at the file open before him. "Your application was unusual." Alex shifted in his seat. "Unusual, sir? We rarely accept students without formal training, especially in their junior year." Mr. Harrington removed his glasses, polishing them with a monogrammed handkerchief. "The Mathers Scholarship is typically awarded to students who have demonstrated exceptional talent through years of dedicated study." "I understand," Alex said quietly. "Do you?" "Because I'm not convinced you do. Westfield's music program is the most competitive in the state. Our graduates go on to Juilliard, Curtis, Berkeley. This isn't a place for hobbyists or—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Natural talents." The way he said natural talents made it sound like a disease. "I've been playing since I was 6, Alex offered. "Yes. On a community center keyboard, according to your application. And you've never had formal lessons?" "No, sir. But I practice every day. I taught myself using library books and YouTube tutorials." Mr. Harrington made a note in the file. "Self-taught." "How quaint." He closed the folder with a snap. "Well, Mr. Chen, you're here now thanks to the board's decision. But I should warn you that Westfield demands excellence. The annual piano competition is in 8 weeks. All piano students are required to participate." Alex sat up straighter. "A competition?" "Yes, though I wouldn't get your hopes up. Our students have been preparing all summer." Mr. Harrington's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Now your schedule. You'll have regular classes in the morning and music theory after lunch. Practice rooms are available from 3 to 7 p.m., though they fill up quickly. You'll need to sign up in advance. He handed Alex a thick handbook. The rules and expectations are outlined here. I suggest you familiarize yourself with them. Alex took the handbook, its weight substantial in his hands. Thank you for the opportunity, sir. I won't let you down. Mr. Harrington raised an eyebrow. We shall see, Mr. Chen. We shall see. The rest of the day passed in a blur of new faces and subtle snubs. In every class, Alex was the outsider, the unknown variable in their carefully balanced equation. During lunch, he sat alone at the end of a long table, picking at a sandwich Diane had packed for him while at nearby tables. Students chatted about summer holidays in the Hamptons and new cars for their 16th birthdays. It was during his free period that Alex found his way to the practice rooms. Most were occupied, the sounds of various instruments filtering through closed doors. At the end of the hall, he found an empty room with an upright piano. The moment his fingers touched the keys, the tension in his shoulders eased. This at least was familiar territory. He started with scales, warming up his fingers, then moved into a piece he'd been working on for months, Debussy's Clair de Lune. He closed his eyes, letting the music flow through him. He was so absorbed that he didn't notice the door opening slightly, didn't see the group of students gathering in the hallway. Phones raised to record him. That's not half bad, said a voice, breaking his concentration. Alex's eyes snapped open. A boy stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame with casual confidence. He had the look of old money, effortlessly groomed, with an expression that suggested he'd never been told no in his life. Thanks, Alex said cautiously. I'm Nate Richardson, the boy said, stepping into the room. Piano performance and composition. You must be the scholarship kid everyone's talking about. Alex Chen. Nate circled the piano, running his fingers along its polished surface. Self-taught, right? From the foster system or something? Alex's hand stilled on the keys. Something like that. Interesting. Nate's smile was all teeth. You know, it takes most students years to play Clair de Lune properly. Private lessons, summer intensives, the works. I practice a lot, Alex said simply. I bet you do. Nate leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially. Listen, a word of advice? The competition's a big deal around here. Scouts from conservatories attend. Scholarships are offered. It can make or break your future. Mr. Harrington mentioned it. Did he now? Nate straightened up. Well, if you're serious about competing, you'll need more practice time than most. There's another piano in the old music wing. Not many students know about it. Alex frowned. Why are you telling me this? Nate shrugged. Call it professional courtesy. Or maybe I like an underdog. He scribbled something on a piece of paper and handed it to Alex. Room 412. The janitor can let you in after hours. Tell him Nate sent you. Before Alex could respond, the bell rang again. Nate gave him a two-fingered salute and left, rejoining a group of friends who were waiting in the hallway. Their laughter echoed as they walked away. Alex stared at the paper in his hand, unsure whether to trust Nate's sudden generosity. But beggars couldn't be choosers, and if he wanted any chance at the competition, he'd need all the practice time he could get. The rest of the day dragged on. Each class a reminder of how far behind he was. Not just in music, but in the unspoken rules of places like Westfield. By the time the final bell rang, Alex was exhausted, his mind buzzing with new information and the weight of expectations he wasn't sure he could meet. As he waited for his bus at the front gates, he spotted Olivia across the parking lot, climbing into a sleek black car. Their eyes met briefly before she looked away, her expression unreadable. Later that night, as he sat at the small desk in his bedroom, Alex opened the competition handbook. The requirements were daunting: a classical piece, a romantic piece, and a contemporary composition. Minimum performance time, 20 minutes. He would need to start preparing immediately. His phone buzzed with a text from Diane. How was your first day, kiddo? Alex stared at the message, unsure how to respond. How could he explain the looks, the whispers, the clear message that he didn't belong? How could he tell her about Mr. Harrington's dismissal or Nate's suspicious kindness? It was fine, he typed back. The music program seems good. Then he set his phone aside, opened his laptop, and began searching for sheet music. He might be an outsider at Westfield, but on the piano he was at home. And maybe, just maybe, if he played well enough, they would have to acknowledge that talent could come from anywhere, even from a foster kid with a second-hand blazer and something to prove. 2 weeks into the semester, Alex had settled into a routine. Wake up at 5, practice finger exercises on the small electronic keyboard Diane had bought him for his birthday last year, catch the early bus to Westfield, and squeeze in study time before classes began. After school, he'd rush to claim a practice room before they all filled up, often settling for 30-minute slots when other students had booked the prime hours. Despite the challenges, he was holding his own in music theory. Years of teaching himself had given him a solid foundation, though his terminology was sometimes unconventional. His theory teacher, Ms. Patel, had taken notice. "You have an interesting way of thinking about chord progressions," she told him after class one day, reviewing his homework. "Not wrong, just different." "I used to think of them as colors," Alex admitted. "Before I knew the proper names," Ms. Patel smiled. "Many great composers did the same. Scribe and associated specific keys with colors. Some call it synesthesia." It was the first genuinely encouraging conversation he'd had at Westfield. A small validation that his self-taught methods weren't entirely worthless, but practice time remained his biggest challenge. The competition loomed just 6 weeks away, and he'd barely begun working on his program. Every day, the practice room sign-up sheets filled faster than the day before. On Thursday afternoon, after being shut out of the practice rooms entirely, Alex remembered Nate's suggestion. Room 412 in the old music wing. He had avoided seeking it out, wary of Nate's motives. But desperation was setting in. The old music wing was in the West Building, a part of campus that had been partially renovated years ago before funding was redirected to the new Performing Arts Center. The hallways were quieter here, the lighting dimmer. Alex checked the room numbers as he walked. 408, 410, 412, the door was unlocked. Alex pushed it open slowly, revealing a spacious room with high ceilings and large windows that let in streams of late afternoon sunlight. And there, in the center of the room, stood a grand piano, larger and more impressive than the uprights in the regular practice rooms. Alex approached it reverently. The piano was a Steinway Model B, its glossy black surface immaculate. It looked brand new, which was odd for an old building. He ran his fingers lightly over the fallboard before lifting it to reveal the keys. Pristine white and black, not a scratch or sign of wear to be seen. He sat on the bench, positioned his hands, and played a C major chord. Silence. He pressed the keys again, harder this time. Nothing. No sound emerged from the beautiful instrument. Confused, Alex looked under the piano. There were no pedals. He examined the strings inside. They were there, but something wasn't right. This wasn't a real piano. It was a display model, a shell that looked perfect but produced no sound. Alex sat back, bewildered. Why would Nate send him to a fake piano? Then understanding dawned on him, accompanied by a wave of humiliation. This was a joke, a prank at his expense. Just then he heard muffled laughter from the hallway. The door had been left slightly ajar, and through the crack he could see Nate standing with a group of friends, phones out, filming his reaction. Oh man, his face. Someone whispered. "Shh, he'll hear you," another voice cautioned. Alex's face burned with embarrassment. He wanted to run, to hide, to transfer schools, anything to escape this moment. But something kept him rooted to the bench. Pride, maybe, or stubborn determination not to give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. Instead, he straightened his posture, positioned his hands on the silent keys, and began to play the piece he'd been working on for the competition. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. His fingers moved with precision over the unresponsive keys, his body swaying slightly with the rhythm of the music that existed only in his head. The laughter in the hallway faltered, then died completely. Alex continued playing, eyes closed, lost in the melody he could hear perfectly in his mind. When he finished the piece, he opened his eyes to find Nate standing in the doorway, no longer laughing. "What are you doing?" Nate asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Alex stood up. "Practicing. Thanks for the recommendation." His voice was steady despite the anger and hurt churning inside him. He walked past Nate and his friends, head held high, though his hands were shaking. He made it all the way to the bus stop before the tears came, hot and unwelcome. He wiped them away quickly, grateful no one was around to see. That night he couldn't sleep. The humiliation kept replaying in his mind, alongside the practical problem. How was he going to prepare for the competition without adequate practice time? The next morning he arrived at school early and went straight to room 412. The fake piano was still there, gleaming in the morning light. Alex sat down at it again, running his hands over the silent keys. Maybe this wasn't just a cruel joke. Maybe it was also an opportunity. He took out his sheet music and began to practice. Without sound to guide him, he had to rely entirely on his muscle memory, his inner ear, and his understanding of the piece. It was challenging in a completely different way than normal practice, forcing him to visualize every note, every dynamic marking. For the next week, Alex developed a new routine. He'd sign up for short slots on the real pianos when available, but spent most of his practice time with the silent Steinway in room 412. He downloaded a metronome app on his phone to help keep time as he worked through his competition pieces in silence. Word had spread, about the prank, of course. He caught the occasional snicker in the hallways, heard the whispers, "That's the kid who practices on a fake piano." But something unexpected happened too. One day, as Alex was playing Bach's Prelude in C major, he sensed someone watching him. He looked up to find Olivia standing in the doorway, her violin case slung over her shoulder. "You know it doesn't make sound, right?" she said. "I'm aware." Alex replied dryly. Olivia stepped into the room. "Then why are you here every day playing a piano that doesn't work?" Alex shrugged. "Because it's available." She watched him for a moment, her head tilted slightly. "You're actually practicing, aren't you? For real?" "Yes. That's..." She seemed to search for the right word. "Different." Alex turned back to the keyboard. "Did you need something?" "No, I just..." Olivia hesitated. "The practice rooms are all full and I heard this wing was empty. I thought I might find a place to work. Well, as you can see, the room is taken. But the piano doesn't make sound, so it won't interfere with your violin." Olivia considered this, then nodded. She unpacked her violin and began tuning it while Alex returned to his silent practice. For an hour they worked in the same room, her violin filling the space with sound, his fingers moving in silence. It became an unexpected arrangement. Nearly every day Olivia would appear at room 412 and they would practice together. They rarely spoke beyond brief greetings, but there was a tentative truce between them. Until one day, when Olivia stopped mid-phrase and looked at Alex with frustration. "How am I supposed to know if I'm getting the tempo right if I can't hear what you're playing?" she demanded. Alex blinked in surprise. "What?" "This Bach piece, it's a duet. I've been trying to match your tempo, but it's impossible when your piano doesn't make sound. You've been playing along with me?" Olivia flushed slightly. "Trying to. The piece works better as a duet." Alex was momentarily speechless. Then he reached for his backpack and pulled out his small battery-powered keyboard. It wasn't much, just 4 octaves with tinny sound, but it was better than nothing. "Will this help?" he asked, setting it up beside the silent grand piano. Olivia's eyes widened. "You had that all along? Why have you been pantomiming on a fake piano when you could have been using that?" "The grand piano has weighted keys. Better for developing proper technique," Alex explained. "I use this at home, but the keys are too light, the action too shallow." Understanding dawned in Olivia's eyes. "So you're using the fake piano for the feel and your muscle memory, and the keyboard for sound when I need it," Alex finished. "It's not ideal, but it works." For the first time since they'd met, Olivia smiled at him, a genuine smile that transformed her face. "That's actually pretty smart." They started over, this time with Alex playing on the small keyboard. The tinny sound was a poor substitute for a real piano, but together with Olivia's violin, the Bach piece came to life in the dusty room. When they finished, Olivia lowered her violin. "You're good," she said, sounding almost reluctant to admit it. "Really good." "Thanks," Alex replied, surprised by the compliment. "Are you really entering the competition?" "I have to. Mr. Harrington said all piano students are required to participate." Olivia bit her lip. "You should know something. Nate Richardson has won for the past 2 years. His father is on the board of trustees and donates a small fortune to the music department annually. So the competition isn't always judged solely on merit," she said carefully. "And Nate doesn't like being challenged. Is that why you warned me off on my first day? Because you thought I'd be competing with your friend?" Olivia shook her head. "Nate's not my friend." We've just been in the same classes forever. She began packing up her violin. Look, I don't care what you do. I just thought you should know what you're up against. As she headed for the door, Alex called after her. Same time tomorrow? Olivia paused, then nodded once before disappearing into the hallway. That evening, as Alex practiced on his small keyboard at home, he couldn't stop thinking about what Olivia had said. The odds were stacked against him. He knew that from the moment he'd stepped through Westfield's gates. But now, the silent piano that was meant to mock him had become his secret weapon. If he could master these pieces without hearing them played, imagine what he could do when he finally sat down at a real piano. The thought made him smile as his fingers danced over the keys, the music in his head growing stronger by the day. 3 weeks before the competition, Westfield Academy buzzed with activity. Posters announcing the event appeared in hallways, and practice rooms were booked solid from dawn until the janitors kicked students out at night. The tension was palpable, especially among the piano students. Alex continued his strange routine, dividing practice time between the silent grand piano in room 412 and whatever short slots he could secure on real pianos. His unlikely partnership with Olivia had evolved into something resembling friendship. They rarely spoke about personal matters, but their musical connection deepened as they challenged each other technically. Your left hand is dragging in measure 27, Olivia pointed out one afternoon as Alex played a section of his Chopin piece on the small keyboard. And your vibrato is inconsistent in the adagio section, he countered without looking up. Olivia made a face but adjusted her technique accordingly. This was their language now. Direct, sometimes blunt, but always focused on the music. After practice, they sometimes walked to the bus stop together. Alex had learned that despite Olivia's apparent privilege, the designer clothes, the expensive violin, the waiting car, she felt like an outsider too. Her parents had moved from Taiwan when she was 5, pushing her relentlessly toward musical excellence as her ticket to belonging in elite American circles. They think if I win enough competitions and get into the right conservatory, people will see past. She gestured vaguely at herself. Their loss if they don't, Alex said simply. Olivia had given him a startled look, as if unused to such straightforward support. On a rainy Tuesday, Alex arrived at room 412 to find the door locked. He tried the handle again, confused. It had never been locked before. As he stood there, uncertain, the building's head custodian, Mr. Torres, rounded the corner with a ring of keys. You won't be able to use that room anymore. Kid, he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. Mr. Harrington's orders. Alex's stomach dropped. Why? Mr. Torres shrugged. Something about the space being needed for storage. They're moving in old filing cabinets tomorrow. But there's a piano in there, Alex protested. That old thing? It's just a shell. Been sitting there for years since they took out the insides. Was supposed to be refurbished, but the funds went elsewhere. Mr. Torres gave him a knowing look. Though I hear you've been putting it to good use anyway. Heat rushed to Alex's face. You knew it didn't work? Course I knew. I know everything that goes on in my buildings. The older man's eyes crinkled at the corners. Pretty clever, practicing on a silent piano. Reminds me of when I was a kid learning guitar with a broomstick because I couldn't afford the real thing. Before Alex could respond, Mr. Torres continued. Anyway, Mr. Harrington was quite specific. No one's to use that room until further notice, especially not students preparing for the competition. He lowered his voice. Between you and me, I think someone complained. Nate, it had to be. The silent piano had become a joke around school at first, but as the competition approached and rumors spread about Alex's dedication, the laughter had died down. Nate had stopped finding it funny when Alex continued to practice despite the humiliation. I understand, Alex said, trying to hide his disappointment. Thanks for letting me know. Mr. Torres watched him for a moment, then looked up and down the empty hallway. You know, he said casually, I do my rounds at different times each day. Sometimes I'm not in the West Building until after 6, and I might forget to check certain rooms if I'm in a hurry. He jangled his keys meaningfully. Room 318 in the East Wing has an upright that needs tuning. Not great, but it works. Nobody uses it because of the squeaky sustain pedal. Alex blinked, understanding slowly dawning. Room 318 East Wing. After 6. I didn't tell you that, Mr. Torres said with a wink before continuing down the hallway. That evening, Alex texted Olivia about the change in circumstances. She replied immediately. "Meet me at the east entrance tomorrow." 6:15 p.m. The next day crawled by. Alex kept watching the clock, distracted in his classes, his fingers itching to practice. When the final bell rang, he headed to the library to study until their meeting time, unable to focus on his homework. At exactly 6:15, he slipped out the side door of the library and made his way to the east entrance. Olivia was already there, peering through the glass doors. "Coast is clear," she whispered as he approached. "Mr. Torres left this wing 10 minutes ago." They made their way quietly to room 318, found it unlocked as promised, and slipped inside. The room was smaller than their usual space, dusty and cluttered with old music stands. The upright piano against the wall had seen better days, its wooden case scratched and water-stained. Alex lifted the fallboard. The keys were yellowed with age, a few of them chipped at the edges. He pressed middle C tentatively. The note rang out slightly flat but unmistakably real. "It's not a Steinway," Olivia said, "but at least it makes sound." Alex grinned. "I'll take it." They settled into their new routine. Every evening after most students had gone home, they would meet at room 318. The squeaky pedal was indeed annoying, but Alex quickly adapted, using it sparingly and adjusting his technique. They kept the practice sessions short, never more than an hour to avoid detection. 2 weeks before the competition, they were interrupted by a knock on the door. They froze, exchanging panicked looks. Had Mr. Harrington discovered their hiding place? The door opened to reveal a woman neither of them recognized, young, with dark curly hair and bright eyes behind stylish glasses. She wore casual clothes rather than the formal attire favored by most Westfield faculty. "Well, this is interesting," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "I thought I was the only one who knew about this room." Alex's hands hovered over the keys. "We were just practicing after hours in an abandoned classroom." The woman smiled. "I can see that. I'm Ms. Rodriguez, by the way. New music teacher. Starting next week officially, but I've been setting up my classroom." "We'll leave," Olivia said quickly, already packing up her violin. "Why? Because you're not supposed to be here?" Ms. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "I may be new, but I'm pretty sure students are allowed to practice." "It's complicated," Alex admitted. Ms. Rodriguez pulled up a chair and sat down. "I've got time." Something about her open expression made Alex trust her. He explained about the competition, the practice room shortage, the silent piano prank, and Mr. Harrington's sudden interest in room 412. Ms. Rodriguez listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern to indignation. "Let me get this straight," she said when Alex finished. "You've been practicing on a non-functioning piano for weeks because other students thought it would be funny to watch you fail?" Alex shrugged. "It wasn't so bad. Actually helped in some ways. And now that you've turned their prank around, they've blocked your access to even that?" "That's Westfield for you," Olivia muttered. Ms. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment, tapping her fingers against her knee. "Play something for me," she said suddenly, looking at Alex. "Anything from your competition program." Alex hesitated, then turned to the piano. He chose the Bach piece he'd been working on with Olivia, the one that felt most comfortable under his fingers. Despite the instrument's limitations, he lost himself in the music, forgetting his audience until the final notes faded. When he looked up, Ms. Rodriguez was watching him with an intensity that made him nervous. "How long did you say you've been playing?" she asked. "Since I was 6, but no formal lessons." "And you're planning to perform that for the competition? On a proper piano?" Alex nodded, along with Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major and Prokofiev's Toccata in D minor, he replied. Ms. Rodriguez's eyebrows shot up. "Ambitious program." "Too ambitious?" he asked, doubt creeping in. "No," she said thoughtfully. "Challenging, but not beyond your capabilities based on what I just heard." She glanced at her watch. "Listen, I need to finish setting up my classroom, but I want to help you both. Meet me in room 215 tomorrow during lunch. It's my new classroom, and there's a baby grand piano that's actually in tune." Alex and Olivia exchanged looks of disbelief. "You'd let us practice there?" Olivia asked. "Not just practice. I want to work with you." Ms. Rodriguez stood up. "Consider it unofficial coaching. I was a competition pianist before I switched to teaching. I might be able to offer some advice." After she left, Alex and Olivia sat in stunned silence. Did that really just happen? Alex finally asked. Olivia looked equally shocked. I think we just got a miracle. The next day they found room 215 easily. It was a spacious classroom with large windows and, as promised, a baby grand piano that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Ms. Rodriguez was arranging sheet music on a shelf when they entered. Right on time, she said with a smile. Lock the door behind you. For the next hour, Ms. Rodriguez worked with them intensively. She had Alex play through his Bach piece, stopping him frequently to make adjustments to his phrasing, his dynamics, his pedaling. Her instructions were precise but kind, pushing him to find more depth in the music. You've got the notes, she told him. Now find the story. Bach wasn't just writing pretty patterns, he was speaking a language. What is he saying here? She pointed to a particularly complex passage. Alex played it again, thinking about the question, feeling the tension in the harmonies, the resolution that followed. It's like a question being asked and then answered, but the answer leads to another question. Ms. Rodriguez nodded, pleased. Exactly. Now play it that way. When the lunch period ended, she stopped them. Same time tomorrow. And after school, I'll be here until 5. You're welcome to use the piano then, too. Why are you helping us? Olivia asked bluntly. Ms. Rodriguez considered the question. Because music education should be about nurturing talent wherever it's found, not just polishing students who've had every advantage. She looked directly at Alex. And because what those students did with that silent piano was cruel, and I don't tolerate cruelty, as they left the classroom, Alex felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. For the first time since arriving at Westfield, he had more than just determination on his side. He had an ally who believed in his abilities, a friend who challenged him musically, and access to a real piano. The competition was just 12 days away. With Ms. Rodriguez's guidance, he might actually have a chance. That afternoon, as he practiced on the baby grand, Alex noticed something strange. The silent piano had forced him to hear the music perfectly in his mind, to feel the weight and resistance of the keys without the reward of sound. Now, when he played on a real instrument, his connection to the music was deeper, more intuitive. What had begun as a humiliating prank had become an unexpected gift. You're smiling, Ms. Rodriguez observed from her desk where she was grading papers. Just thinking, Alex replied, his fingers still moving over the keys. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best opportunities. Ms. Rodriguez smiled back. Keep that perspective. You're going to need it. 1 week before the competition, the atmosphere at Westfield Academy grew electric with anticipation. Students whispered about who was playing what, which pieces were most impressive, and who had the best chance of winning. As a first-time competitor, Alex wasn't on anyone's radar, except Nate's. It happened during Thursday's music theory class. Alex was concentrating on a counterpoint exercise when a folded note landed on his desk. He opened it cautiously. Ready to embarrass yourself, charity case? Better start practicing on a real piano. Oh, wait. Alex crumpled the note and shoved it in his pocket, refusing to give Nate the satisfaction of a reaction. But as class ended, Nate cornered him in the hallway, flanked by 2 friends. Heard you found a new practice spot, Nate said, his voice low. Doesn't matter. You can't undo weeks of playing on a dummy piano. Thanks for your concern, Alex replied evenly, trying to step around him. Nate blocked his path. You know, I was doing you a favor. The competition's a big deal. Scouts from Juilliard, Curtis, Berkeley. When you crash and burn, it won't just be in front of the school. It'll be in front of people who could have given you a future. A chill ran through Alex. He hadn't known about the Scouts. Maybe you should withdraw, Nate continued. Say you're not ready. Save yourself the humiliation. I'm not withdrawing, Alex said, meeting Nate's gaze steadily. Your funeral? Nate shrugged. Don't say I didn't warn you. As Nate and his friends walked away, laughing, Alex leaned against the wall, trying to calm his suddenly racing heart. Scouts from top conservatories. The stakes were higher than he'd realized. That afternoon, his practice session with Ms. Rodriguez didn't go well. His fingers felt stiff, his timing off. He kept making mistakes in passages he'd previously mastered. After his 3rd attempt at the Prokofiev ended in a jumble of wrong notes, Ms. Rodriguez stopped him. What's going on, Alex? You were playing this perfectly yesterday. Alex rubbed his face tiredly. Just having an off day, I guess. Ms. Rodriguez pulled up a chair beside the piano bench. Talk to me. Something's bothering you. Nate said there will be Scouts at the competition. From Juilliard and other conservatories. Ah, Ms. Rodriguez nodded. He's trying to get in your head. Is it true, though? Yes, there are usually representatives from top music schools at the Westfield competition. It's quite prestigious. Alex's shoulders slumped. Then maybe Nate's right. Maybe I should withdraw. Because you're having one bad practice session? Because I've been practicing on a fake piano for weeks. Because everyone else has had proper lessons for years. Because... He cut himself off, embarrassed by his outburst. Ms. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something about my first major competition? She finally asked. Alex nodded. I was 16 like you. I'd been taking lessons since I was 4, practicing hours every day. My teacher was famous, my parents spent a fortune on my musical education. On paper, I had every advantage. She paused, looking out the window. The night before the competition, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the ways I might fail, all the people I would disappoint. By morning, I was a wreck. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely button my shirt. What happened? Alex asked. I bombed, she said simply. Completely fell apart on stage. Forgot entire sections of pieces I'd been playing for years. It was mortifying. That's supposed to make me feel better? Ms. Rodriguez laughed. The point is, technical skill isn't everything. Neither is expensive training or fancy pedigrees. What matters most is your relationship with the music and your ability to stay centered when the pressure hits. She tapped his chest lightly. The music is in here. You've proven that by practicing on a silent piano for weeks. That's not a disadvantage, it's your secret weapon. Alex wasn't convinced, but he nodded anyway. Now, Ms. Rodriguez said, standing up, let's try something different. Close the fallboard. You want me to practice on a silent piano again? Exactly. Let's go back to basics. For the rest of the session, Alex played his entire program on the closed piano, hearing the music in his head, feeling the weight of imaginary keys beneath his fingers. By the end, something had shifted. The panic receded, replaced by a calm determination. Better? Ms. Rodriguez asked. Better, Alex agreed. That night, he called Diane to check in. He'd been so focused on practicing that their conversations had grown shorter, less frequent. There's my piano man, she said warmly when she answered. How's the preparation going? It's intense, Alex admitted. The competition's next Friday. I know. I've got it marked on my calendar in big red letters. I already requested the day off work. Alex sat up straighter. You're coming? Of course I'm coming. Did you think I'd miss your big debut? A lump formed in his throat. I didn't want to ask. I know it's a long drive and you'd have to miss work and... Alex, Diane interrupted gently. I wouldn't miss it for the world. After they hung up, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had people in his corner, Diane, Ms. Rodriguez, Olivia, even Mr. Torres in his own way. Whatever happened at the competition, he wouldn't be facing it alone. The next few days passed in a blur of practice sessions, last-minute adjustments, and nervous anticipation. Ms. Rodriguez worked with him tirelessly, refining details, building his confidence. Olivia joined them sometimes, offering her honest critiques and, increasingly, her encouragement. Your Bach is really coming together, she told him after a particularly good run-through. Better than Nate's version last year. You think so? Definitely. His was technically perfect, but... She waved her hand vaguely. Boring. The day before the competition, Ms. Rodriguez insisted they end practice early. Rest is as important as practice at this point, she advised. Go home, eat a good dinner, get plenty of sleep, and try not to think about tomorrow. Easier said than done. That night, Alex lay awake for hours, his mind racing through his program, imagining every possible scenario for the next day. What if he forgot the music? What if he froze on stage? What if Nate was right? And all those weeks on the silent piano had ruined his chances. When sleep finally came, it was fitful and filled with dreams of pianos with keys that wouldn't respond to his touch. Competition day dawned clear and crisp. Alex arrived at school early, his competition clothes, a white dress shirt and black slacks borrowed from Diane's nephew, carefully packed in his backpack. The campus was unusually busy for a Friday morning. With parents and guests already arriving for the afternoon event, he found Ms. Rodriguez in her classroom, arranging flowers on the piano. For good luck, she explained when she saw him. How are you feeling? Terrified, he admitted. Good. A little fear keeps you sharp. She handed him a small paper bag. Banana and honey sandwich. Eat it about an hour before you perform. Slow release energy. Alex took the bag, touched by her thoughtfulness. Thanks for everything. Ms. Rodriguez squeezed his shoulder. You've done the work. Now trust it. The competition was scheduled to begin at 1 o'clock in the main auditorium. Competitors were assigned warm-up times in practice rooms throughout the morning. Alex's slot was at 11, giving him 2 hours to prepare before his performance at 1:30. As he made his way to his assigned practice room, he passed Nate coming out of the auditorium, looking confident in a tailored suit. Good luck today, Chen, Nate said with a smirk. Try not to embarrass yourself too badly. Alex kept walking, refusing to engage. He had more important things to focus on. The practice room was small but contained a decent upright piano. Alex warmed up methodically, running through technical exercises before touching parts of each piece. Not playing them in full, just reconnecting with the feeling, reminding his fingers of the patterns. At 12:30, he changed into his performance clothes and made his way to the green room behind the auditorium, where all competitors were required to gather. The space was tense with nervous energy. Some students paced, others sat with eyes closed, moving their fingers in silent rehearsal. Olivia was there too, dressed in a simple black dress, her copper hair pulled back in a neat bun. You look like you're about to face a firing squad, she whispered when he sat beside her. Feels that way, he whispered back. Just remember, you've already won by getting this far. Everything else is bonus. Before Alex could respond, the door opened and Mr. Harrington entered, clipboard in hand. Quiet, please, he announced. The competition is about to begin. You will perform in the order listed on the schedule. When your name is called, proceed to the stage, announce your program, and begin when ready. The judges will consider technical proficiency, artistic interpretation, and stage presence. Good luck to all of you. His gaze swept the room, pausing briefly on Alex with an unreadable expression before moving on. The first competitor was called, a senior named Tyler who was playing Liszt. As he left the green room, the remaining students fell into tense silence. Alex closed his eyes, trying to center himself the way Ms. Rodriguez had taught him. He imagined the silent piano in room 412, the way he'd learned to hear the music without external sound, the deep connection he'd formed with each piece. One by one, students were called to perform. Some returned looking relieved, others close to tears. Nate went fifth, returning with a satisfied smile that made Alex's stomach tighten. Alex Chen, the stage manager finally called. Alex stood, his legs feeling oddly disconnected from his body. As he walked toward the stage, he heard Olivia whisper, "Remember why you play." The auditorium was larger than he'd expected, filled with hundreds of people. Stage lights made it hard to see specific faces, but in the front row, he spotted Diane sitting straight and proud. Beside her was Ms. Rodriguez, who gave him a subtle thumbs up. And there, in the center of the auditorium, sat a magnificent grand piano, larger and more imposing than any he'd played before. Alex approached the microphone at the front of the stage. "I'm Alex Chen," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'll be performing Bach's Prelude in C major, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, and Prokofiev's Toccata in D minor." As he walked to the piano and adjusted the bench, he noticed a small group of people in the back row taking notes. The scouts, he realized. His heart rate doubled. He placed his hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and in that moment something strange happened. The auditorium, the audience, the judges, the scouts, all of it faded away. It was just him and the piano. Not the silent one that had been a prank. Not the worn upright in room 318. Not even Ms. Rodriguez's baby grand. This piano, with its perfect action and resonant tone, felt like an old friend he was meeting for the first time. Alex began to play. The first notes of Bach's Prelude in C major flowed from Alex's fingertips like water, clear, pure, and seemingly effortless. The familiar arpeggios rippled across the auditorium, filling the space with sound that was at once mathematically precise and deeply expressive. As he played, Alex felt something he'd never experienced before, a profound connection not just to the music but to the instrument itself. This piano responded to his touch with a sensitivity that transformed his playing. Notes he'd practiced in silence for weeks now sang out with a richness that seemed to amplify the emotions he'd poured into learning them. He moved through the Bach with a quiet confidence, each phrase building naturally into the next. When the final chord resolved, there was a moment of perfect stillness before he transitioned to the Chopin. The nocturne began softly, almost tentatively, like a question being asked in the darkness. This was the piece that had given him the most trouble during practice. Its delicate balance of melancholy and hope, requiring a nuance he wasn't sure he could achieve. But now, as his right hand carried the melody while his left provided gentle support, Alex found himself thinking of Diane, of her unwavering belief in him, of late nights spent at their small kitchen table as she helped him with homework after double shifts at the hospital. The music took on a storytelling quality, each phrase speaking of struggle and perseverance, of small kindnesses and unexpected beauty. When he reached the middle section with its more turbulent emotions, he thought of the silent piano, of Nate's mocking laughter, of his own determination to turn humiliation into opportunity. The melody soared, backed by rolling chords that grew in intensity before settling back into the opening theme, now infused with a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. As the final notes of the Chopin faded, Alex took a deep breath, preparing for the Prokofiev, the most technically demanding piece in his program. The toccata was all driving rhythm and percussive energy, requiring not just technical precision but physical stamina. It was a bold choice for a competition piece, especially for someone self-taught. Alex attacked the opening with fierce concentration, his fingers flying across the keyboard in a controlled frenzy. This was where those hours on the silent piano paid unexpected dividends. Without sound to guide him, he'd developed an acute awareness of the physical aspects of playing, the exact pressure needed for each key, the precise timing of complex rhythmic patterns, the choreography of hands moving at high speed across the keyboard. The piece built in intensity, its dissonant harmonies and relentless drive creating a tension that filled the auditorium. Alex was barely aware of his surroundings now, lost in the music, his body responding instinctively to what the piece demanded. When he finally arrived at the thunderous conclusion, bringing the toccata to its powerful end with a series of decisive chords, the release of energy was almost physical, then silence. For a moment, Alex sat motionless at the piano, hands still poised above the keys, heart pounding in his chest. Had he really just played all three pieces without a single memory slip? Without a major technical mistake? It seemed impossible. The silence broke with a single pair of hands clapping, then another. Then suddenly the entire auditorium erupted in applause. As Alex stood and turned to face the audience, he saw something he hadn't expected. People were getting to their feet. First Diane, tears streaming down her face, then Ms. Rodriguez beside her. Soon most of the audience was standing. As he took his bow, Alex caught sight of Nate in the wings, his expression a mixture of disbelief and grudging respect. Nearby stood Olivia, waiting for her turn to perform, a genuine smile on her face as she gave him a subtle thumbs up. The rest of the competition passed in a blur. Alex returned to the green room, still in a daze, receiving congratulations from fellow competitors who had previously ignored him. Olivia performed brilliantly, her violin singing with an emotional depth that moved even those who didn't typically enjoy classical music. Other pianists played with technical excellence, though few took the risks Alex had with his program choice. When all 18 competitors had performed, there was a brief intermission while the judges deliberated. Students and their families mingled in the lobby, buzzing with speculation about who might win. Alex found Diane waiting for him by the refreshment table. "You were amazing," she said, pulling him into a tight hug. "I had no idea you could play like that." "Neither did I," Alex admitted. "That piano, it was like it was helping me play." "It wasn't the piano," said a voice behind them. They turned to find Ms. Rodriguez approaching with a tall, distinguished-looking man. "It was all you, Alex. You just needed the right instrument to show what you're capable of." The man extended his hand. "Dr. Lawrence Chen, no relation, I assume. I'm from the Juilliard pre-college division. Your performance was quite remarkable, young man." Alex shook his hand, too stunned to speak. "Ms. Rodriguez has told me about your unusual practice methods," Dr. Chen continued. "Fascinating approach. We're always looking for students who can adapt and innovate." He handed Alex a business card. "Call my office next week. I'd like to discuss some possibilities." As Dr. Chen walked away, Alex stared at the card in his hand. Juilliard. The word alone was enough to make his heart race. "Did that just happen?" he asked Ms. Rodriguez. She grinned. "It absolutely did, and he wasn't the only one impressed. I've had 3 other scouts ask about you." Before Alex could process this information, the announcement came for everyone to return to the auditorium for the results. He found himself back in the green room with the other competitors, all of them tense with anticipation. Mr. Harrington appeared at the door. "All competitors on stage, please. Line up in performance order." They filed onto the stage, blinking in the bright lights facing the audience. Alex stood between a sophomore saxophonist and Olivia, who gave his hand a quick squeeze before facing forward. The head judge, a renowned pianist from the State University, stepped to the microphone. "Before we announce the results, I want to commend all of our performers today. The level of musicianship was exceptional." She smiled at the line of students. "Now for our awards." The 3rd-place winner was a senior flutist who had performed a challenging program of contemporary works. 2nd place went to Olivia, whose Bach sonata had brought tears to many eyes. Alex squeezed her hand in congratulation as she stepped forward to accept her award, beaming with quiet pride. "And our 1st-place winner," the judge continued, "with a performance that displayed not just technical mastery, but profound musical understanding and emotional depth. Alex Chen." For a moment, Alex couldn't move, certain he'd misheard. It was only when Olivia gave him a gentle push forward that he stepped up to accept the trophy. A small golden piano on a wooden base with his name already engraved on the plaque. "Congratulations." "Young man," the judge said, shaking his hand. "That was a performance I won't soon forget." As applause filled the auditorium, Alex looked out at the audience. Diane was crying again. Ms. Rodriguez was beaming, and even Mr. Torres had slipped in at the back, giving him a discreet thumbs up. This moment, this victory, belonged to all of them. The reception afterward was held in the school lobby. Students and families mingled, enjoying refreshments while congratulating the winners. Alex found himself surrounded by people he'd never spoken to before, all of them suddenly interested in his background, his training, his plans for the future. He was answering questions about his Prokofiev interpretation when he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Nate standing there, his expression unreadable. "Congratulations," Nate said stiffly. "You played well." Alex studied him for a moment. "Thanks. So did you." Nate hesitated, then added, "That silent piano? It was a stupid prank. I didn't think you'd stick with it. Best thing that could have happened to me." "Actually," Alex replied honestly. A flash of confusion crossed Nate's face before he nodded and walked away, joining his parents, who were deep in conversation with Mr. Harrington. Mr. Harrington himself approached Alex later, as the crowd was thinning. "Quite a performance." "Mr. Chen," he said, his tone more respectful than Alex had ever heard it. "Perhaps I was hasty in my initial assessment of your potential." Alex nodded, accepting the closest thing to an apology he was likely to get. "I understand several conservatories have expressed interest," Mr. Harrington continued. "Westfield would be pleased to support your continued development. We have funds for private lessons for exceptional students." He emphasized the word exceptional, as if it were a category he'd only just decided Alex belonged in. "Thank you, sir," Alex said. "I appreciate that." As Mr. Harrington walked away, Ms. Rodriguez appeared at Alex's side. "Impressive," she murmured. "I've never seen him admit he was wrong before." "It's been a day of firsts," Alex replied with a smile. Later, as he and Diane walked to her car, trophy carefully wrapped and tucked under his arm, Alex felt a strange mix of emotions: pride in what he'd accomplished, gratitude for those who had helped him, and a new sense of possibility he'd never experienced before. "What are you thinking?" Diane asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. "About that fake piano," Alex said. "And how something meant to tear me down ended up lifting me higher than I ever thought I could go." Diane smiled, putting an arm around his shoulders. "That's because they underestimated what you're made of. You didn't just play music today, Alex, you told your story." As they drove away from Westfield Academy, Alex looked back at the imposing buildings with their ivy-covered walls. He thought about the silent piano in room 412, wondering if it was still there, if future students might someday hear the story of how a foster kid turned a cruel prank into triumph. He hoped they would. Not because he wanted recognition, but because sometimes the best lessons come disguised as obstacles. And sometimes the path to success leads through the very doors others try to close in your face. The trophy beside him caught the afternoon sunlight, sending golden reflections dancing across the car interior. But it wasn't the trophy that mattered most to Alex. It was the music he'd heard even in silence, the music that had been inside him all along, waiting for the right moment to be heard.